Hey guys, tonight we're taking a stroll back to the dimly lit days of medieval Europe. Not to explore castles or courtly intrigues, but to slip quietly into the everyday life of the average person and ask a simple but surprisingly tricky question. Just how big were medieval humans, really? You're surrounded now by creaky timber walls, rough linen garments, and the steady scent of hearth smoke drifting in from a nearby fire. Chickens scratch underfoot, the mud squelches slightly beneath your shoes, and a boy no older than 9 hunches beside a cart. Yet he's already working like a grown man. You glance around. Everyone seems smaller than you expected, don't they? You probably won't survive this, not because of sword fights or plagues, but because your spine is used to modern mattresses and your diet hasn't been shaped by centuries of malnutrition. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this little time-traveling project reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in the dark. There's no alarm, no clock, just the sound of a rooster crowing and the faint clink of metal tools echoing from outside the thatched house. It's your job to collect water from the stream today, and as you step out, your joints already ache a bit. You're not sick. You're not injured. This is just what life feels like for someone living in the year 1292. And you, well, you're small, shorter than someone from the 21st century. When you look in the warped, polished metal that passes for a mirror, your reflection is lean, hardened by labor, and your face looks older than your years. You might be 15, but your back is already used to bending beneath weight. If you were to stand next to someone from the modern world, they'd likely notice your height first. But is it that you're short, or are they just tall? The truth is, medieval humans weren't as tiny as myths suggest. On average, men stood around 5.6, women around 5'2". You'd think the towering knights in armor were 7-foot giants, but in reality, most of them wouldn't have made it onto a modern basketball court. Their armor preserved in museums often looks narrow by today's standards. Helmets barely fit modern heads. Swords seem enormous, but that's partly because the people wielding them weren't. But don't be fooled into thinking everyone was the same size. Social class, nutrition, disease, and even geography all played into your physical development. If you were a peasant, you were more likely to be shorter, thinner, and have more dental issues. Why? Because you grew up on grain, and hope rarely touched meat, and survived illness after illness without medicine. If you were born into wealth, you might have had better access to protein and fewer parasites. Maybe you'd grow to 5'8" instead of 5'5". That's a privilege you could measure in inches. Take bones, for example. Archaeologists study skeletons from medieval cemeteries and find telltale signs: shrunken femurs, curved spines, worn joints, and teeth ground flat by coarse bread. Growth in childhood was often stunted thanks to repeated famine and illness. If you were sick as a child, and you likely were, your body would halt development to preserve energy. And even if you made it to adulthood, your final height might be a couple of inches below your genetic potential. But it's not just the bones. It's the boots, the doors, the furniture. You duck slightly to enter your cottage. You crouch to sit on a bench by the fire. Everything around you is scaled to fit people who averaged under 5'6". And they were lean too, not necessarily out of fitness, but because calories were scarce. You're wiry, sunburnt, calloused. Now step into a castle. The nobility had access to better food, sure, but even they weren't immune to childhood disease. A young noble girl, pale and perfumed, might stand only 5'3" tall for her gender, but still far below the modern average. And the fashion of the time helped elongate the illusion. Tall hats, pointed shoes, long silhouettes, designed to stretch the body upward in perception, if not in fact. In the cities, it gets more complicated. You've got a mix of merchants, craftspeople, and scholars, all influenced by shifting diets, imported foods, and varying levels of sanitation. You might find a scribe who's 5'1" next to a blacksmith towering at 5'9". But across the population, the mean doesn't move much. Interestingly, one group does seem consistently taller monks. Their diets in monasteries, while not exactly luxurious, were balanced, and they often lived in cleaner, more stable environments, and they weren't overworked from birth like peasants. So yes, ironically, those devoted to lives of prayer often had stronger, taller bodies than the laborers tilling the land. You walk through the village and realize something else people here move differently. There's a slowness, a deliberate quality. No one rushes. Their energy is saved for necessity. And as you pass by men carrying loads of timber, you notice the broad shoulders, the ropey arms. People weren't built for show. They were built for endurance. Now you kneel beside the stream with your wooden bucket. Your reflection ripples back at you, strong jaw, sun-worn skin, tired eyes. Your clothes are rough spun. Your muscles ache not from lifting weights, but from lifting life. You are the size you need to be. No bigger, no smaller. Just perfectly calibrated to survive this exact world. And when you stand stretching your back and shielding your eyes from the morning sun, you can't help but wonder if you were born in another century with vaccines, vitamins, and vacations. Would you have been taller, heavier, healthier, or would that version of you feel just as small in a different kind of struggle? Let's keep walking. The road is long and there's more to see. The road curves gently away from the village, dipping between rolling hills and lines of trees that shiver under the weight of early morning mist. Your feet tread the packed dirt path that countless others have worn down before you. The weight of your water bucket shifts with each step, tugging at your shoulder. Your joints complain, but you ignore them. There's no luxury in complaining here. That's a modern invention, like breakfast cereal, orthodontics, or ergonomic chairs. In this world, you get up and move because survival doesn't pause. A cart rolls past, its wooden wheels creaking under the burden of turnips and barley. The man guiding it gives you a nod. His frame is small, almost slight, but his arms are wiry and strong. You'd guess he's maybe 5'5", which, as you're starting to realize, is pretty average. But in another time, another place, he might have been considered short. It's not just about height. It's about presence. In modern society, we tend to equate larger with more powerful, tall politicians, commanding CEOs, statuesque models. But in the medieval world, size didn't guarantee authority. The local reeve, the steward of the manor, might be shorter than a teenage farmhand, but his control came from legal backing, not biceps. A merchant might weigh less than the ox he owns, but still control vast networks of trade. The body was a tool, but not the only one that mattered. Still, the human body reveals so much about the life it endured. When archaeologists uncover skeletons from this era, they look at more than height. They examine muscle attachments, signs of arthritis, enamel hypoplasia on teeth, even stress lines in bone. And again, they see evidence of hard use. You walking this road probably developed those stress lines early, especially in your legs and lower back. And if you're female, add in pelvic asymmetries from childbirth before the age of 20, plus calcium loss from pregnancies and nursing, and your bones would tell a story of endurance shaped by necessity. But let's leave the countryside for a moment and travel into the records of kings. Royal households kept inventories, payment rolls, sometimes even medical records. And while most don't list height explicitly, clothing and armor give us clues. A surviving suit of armor from the 15th century, belonging to King Henry V, suggests he stood about 5'9". That's tall for the time, but still shorter than the average modern man. His build was compact, strong, optimized for wearing up to 60 pounds of metal while still moving fast enough to lead charges and deflect blades. Now look at the people who followed him, his squires, archers, foot soldiers. These weren't giants either. Most longbowmen were recruited for their skill, not their size. Many stood just over 5 feet tall, but could draw bows requiring upwards of 100 pounds of force. Their skeletons show bone growth abnormalities in their arms and shoulders from constant tension. Their frames were compact, even slight, but brutally efficient. And what about children? Here's where things get more sobering. Many children didn't reach adulthood. Those who did were often stunted. Modern research into medieval skeletons reveals that growth often plateaued after major illness. A fever, untreated infection, or winter starvation could halt development permanently. So you might find a 12-year-old who looks 8, or a 20-year-old whose bones tell the story of chronic malnutrition. You, if you were born poor, likely didn't reach your full height potential, not because of genes, but because your body was constantly robbed of the nutrients it needed. The rich fared better, of course, but even they weren't immune. Let's say you were born into nobility, raised in a stone manor with a fireplace in your room. You might have access to meats, cheese, fish, and imported goods. But your body would still be shaped by your environment, the cold, the illness, the lack of understanding of medicine. And your height might creep up by an inch or two, but no more. There were no protein powders, no supplements, just luck, cleanliness, and what your servants could gather. You continue down the road. Fields open around you now, barley oats, a few scrawny cows grazing under watchful eyes. You pass a farmhand no older than you, with his sleeves rolled high. His chest is broad, but he's not tall. You greet him, and he returns a smile with teeth worn blunt from years of grinding coarse bread. Bread made with grit, often literally stone flecks from grinding wheels, made their way into dough, wearing down teeth over time. Another quiet clue about how humans aged faster here, how even eating carved a mark on the body. Back in town in the workshops, a blacksmith hammers away. His back is hunched slightly, not from age, but from thousands of hours over an anvil. His arms are thick, sure, but his overall stature isn't that different from yours. And his apprentices smaller still. Children who will never have a childhood the way you knew it. Their bones are already adapting to the labor they're forced into. It's strange to think that your size, your height, your build is less about genetics and more about context. The soil, the weather, the food, the infections you catch, and how many times you survive them, these shape you more than anything else. You look at your own hands. They're calloused, browned by sun and smoke. Your fingers are stronger than you realize, built from daily repetition. Pulling ropes, gripping tools, carrying weight. You are not large by modern standards, but you are durable. And that's the key difference. Modern humans are taller, often heavier, and arguably weaker, because we don't use our bodies the way medieval people did. Here you don't sit for hours. You don't text. You carry, lift, climb, stretch. You grow into your shape through effort. Everything is functional. Every muscle matters. As the sun climbs higher, you feel its warmth press against your back. You continue toward the market. There are more people to see: merchants, mothers, children, travelers. Each of them tells a story through the size of their bodies. Some are slender from fasting. Some are stooped from injury. some are shaped by privilege, and some, like you, are simply survivors. And as you walk, you begin to notice how height doesn't define strength here. Durability does. Resilience does. The ability to wake up, walk miles, and do it all again the next day, that's the true measure of a medieval human. Let's keep going. There's more ground to cover. The market buzzes with a kind of earthy energy, not loud but persistent. The shuffle of feet on straw-covered stones, the low hum of barter, the occasional cluck or bleat from livestock, penned off to the side. You weave through the crowd, your bucket, now empty, swinging at your side as you scan the faces, and it hits you again how many of them are shorter than you expected. Women with wide hips and narrow shoulders, men with strong forearms and sun-leathered skinned children whose frames seem almost fragile. Everyone here is functional. There's no excess. Just what's needed to do the work and carry on. A butcher calls out near the edge of the square. You stop for a moment to watch him. He's compact, built like a boulder, maybe 5'5" at most, but the strength in his movements is undeniable. He hoists an entire side of pork onto a wooden hook with a single fluid motion. His back doesn't curve with weakness, but with purpose. This is what people were shaped by labor, not leisure. In modern life, we think of average height as a fixed statistic, something biological, almost immutable. But here, the average is shaped by hardship. People are not the size they could be. They are the size they have to be. And in some places, they're even smaller. You overhear a traveler speak of a mountain village far to the north, where men average just over 5 feet tall, and where women rarely grow past 4'10". Not because of some ancient gene, but because the soil is rocky, the winters are long, and the food is never quite enough. Even in larger towns, like the one you're in now, nutrition is patchy. Bread is the staple, yes, but it's heavy and gritty. Ale is more common than water, because water can carry disease. Meat is a luxury for feast days. Most people eat what they grow. Beans, leeks, turnips, and what they catch if they're lucky. Calcium, iron, and protein. Rare visitors in most diets. And so the bodies that grow from this earth are grounded. Small, sturdy, scarred. You pass a young woman balancing a sack of flour on her back, her frame swaying slightly as she adjusts. Her face is stern, her skin freckled. You'd guess she's maybe 5'1", but her posture, her stance tells you she's strong enough to drag a pig through mud without blinking. You don't ask her height. You wouldn't dare. But if you did, she'd probably laugh, because it wouldn't matter. Back home in your own time, the idea of tracking growth is practically a science. Pediatricians chart it, parents compare it, and entire industries exist to help children reach their potential. But here a child's growth is a gamble. One good winter, one bad fever, one missed harvest, and an entire year's worth of inches might vanish. There's no tracking chart. Only the hope that you'll live long enough to outgrow your tunic. And if you're a noble child, it's better sure but not perfect. You might have milk from the family cow or a nursemaid to fetch soft cheese and roast apples, but even nobles fall ill. Even nobles lack vitamins they don't know exist. Rickets and scurvy don't care about your family crest. They just do their work in silence, shortening limbs and softening bones. You wander further toward the center of the market. A tailor's stall catches your eye. He's pinning a sleeve to a worn tunic, working carefully beside a row of wooden mannequins. They're shorter than you expect, some barely 5 feet tall. Not children's forms, but adult ones. Because these are built to fit the living, the average body. A shape that's endured hunger, cold, labor, and childbirth. Not gym workouts and protein shakes. He sees you looking and offers a soft chuckle. They look small to you, he asks. They look just right to me. And he's right. In this world, you don't measure worth by inches. You measure it by endurance. How long you last through winter. How quickly you recover from a wound. How many sacks you can carry in a day. A man might be 5'4", but if he can pull his plow faster than a taller one, he wins. There's also a kind of quiet truth in the architecture. Doors are lower, ceilings press down, stairs are steep, beds are short. Not because people curled up to sleep, but because their legs simply weren't that long. The world was built to match the bodies that lived in it. And yet there were always outliers. That one man in the village who towers at 5'11" like a beanstalk. That woman with unusually long limbs. They're rare. And often they're misunderstood, accused of witchcraft, seen as omens or quietly avoided. Unusual size draws attention, and attention is rarely good. You pause near a cart where a healer is selling salves. He's older, maybe in his 50s, though time has carved more years into his skin than it truly owns. His posture is bent not from injury, but from life. And you realize that age shrinks people here. There's no stretching, no physical therapy, no surgeries to correct posture. You grow into your body young and then watch it shrink slowly as decades pass. The healer looks up and meets your eyes. You're standing straight, he says. Keep doing that, while you still can. You nod. Because in this world, posture isn't about confidence. It's about pain, about compression, about the toll of years spent carrying firewood, lifting children, kneeling in prayer, walking miles to find salt or wool or bread. You leave the market with that thought still echoing in your head. And as you make your way toward the western gate, where the road disappears into rolling hills, you think about your own size. Not your height, but your footprint. The space you take up. The space you earn. Because here, nothing is given. And every inch you grow is fought for inch by aching bone-deep inch. Let's keep walking. The past still has more to show you. The road narrows again as you leave the bustling market, behind the last murmurs of trade fading into the morning haze. You follow a winding path lined with hedges and dry stone walls where sheep bleat lazily in the distance, and the scent of damp grass clings to the air. It's quieter here, calmer, and it gives you space to think not just about size in inches or feet, but about size and presence and how the medieval human body had to carry not just weight, but legacy. Because here's something strange to consider: even though people were smaller in stature, their lives were often larger in effort. They did more with less. Less food, less rest, less medicine, less comfort. You walk further, passing a woman hauling firewood. She's barefoot, maybe 30, maybe older. It's hard to tell because time wears people differently here. Her frame is slight, her bones prominent beneath her skin, but her movements are sure and steady. You get the feeling that she could carry twice her body weight if it meant surviving winter. You think again about the myth that medieval people were just tiny by modern standards. And yes, the averages were lower, but not drastically so. A man at 5'6" or 5'7" would not stand out today, especially in many parts of the world. A woman at 5'2" still fits modern clothing sizes. But the difference wasn't just about height. It was about mass, about build. You weren't padded with fat unless you were lucky or cursed depending on the times. In some cultures, being heavier was a sign of wealth. In others, it made you a target. Either way, few people had the luxury of surplus. You climb a small rise now and pause at the top, looking down at a cluster of homes, a tiny hamlet tucked between two hills. Smoke curls from chimneys. A boy chases chickens with bare feet slapping the ground. His laughter rings out across the fields. He's probably 10 years old, but no more than 4 feet tall. Maybe he'll grow another foot by the time he's an adult. Maybe not. If there's a famine, if illness strikes, if the winter takes more than food, he might stop growing altogether. And yet he runs like the wind. His legs are wiry, his chest narrow, but his energy is endless. That's the thing about medieval children. They're not sheltered. They're not spared. Their bodies are trained by repetition, by responsibility, by necessity. You think about the children of your time, how they grow tall on fortified cereals and vaccinations, on padded playrooms and pediatric checkups. And it makes you realize height isn't just biology, it's luxury. As you descend into the hamlet, a cart passes you. It's pulled not by a horse, but by a man and his teenage son. They take turns pulling the yoke, their backs, bent legs, straining. The father is maybe 5'5". The son is shorter, barely reaching his shoulder. You nod as they pass. They nod back. No words needed. Just effort shared. Inside one of the cottages, a midwife works over a newborn. You peer in through the open door unnoticed. The baby is swaddled, tiny and wrinkled, and already the village is guessing. Will he grow tall like his Uncle Will? He be strong like his mother? But even now, his future height is at the mercy of the world. Will he get enough milk? Will he avoid disease? Will his bones stretch, or will they stall? It's strange to think that this uncertainty shaped everything, even armor design. You remember stories of knights in gleaming steel towering over the battlefield. But the truth, most armor was made to fit men between 5'5" and 5'8". The imposing look came not from height, but from presence, from posture, from how the armor framed the man inside it. And if you were taller than average, custom armor would cost more. If you were shorter, you'd still fight, but maybe with a different weapon. Size determined role. Role determined fate. You walk past a cooper's shop now where barrels are being shaped and iron bands hammered into place. The man working the forge is built low and wide, all muscle and momentum. He's not tall, probably just 5'4", but his hands are thick and his shoulders like stone. You wonder how many calories he burns in a day hammering iron and bending wood. Probably twice as many as someone in an office chair back home. And still, he eats less. Just coarse bread, maybe cheese, maybe an onion. Protein when he can afford it. And yet, his body adapts, builds, maintains. Not for aesthetics, but for survival. You pass through the hamlet and continue down a shaded lane. A church bell rings in the distance, calling villagers to prayer or marking a death. In either case, it's a reminder that life here is fragile, and fragility shapes the body. If you break a bone, you might not heal properly. If you fall ill, you might shrink instead of grow. If you're born small, you might never catch up. But there's a quiet power in these people, in you. Because even without modern comforts, even without height charts or vitamin supplements, you endure. You adjust. Your bones thicken where they're needed. Your spine curves to balance baskets. Your legs knot with the strength to walk 20 miles in a day. You're not built for speed or style. You're built to last. And maybe that's the greatest difference of all. As the sun begins to dip, casting long shadows over the hedgerows, you take one last look back at the hamlet. The people there are closing up shops, hauling firewood, calling children inside. Their silhouettes are small, but their lives immense. You turn forward again. The journey isn't over yet. The body may be humble, but the history it carries stretches farther than any road. Let's keep walking. Evening begins to descend like a soft wool blanket, dimming the sky into muted grays and smoky blues. You follow the path toward the edge of a forest, now the light filtering in long golden rays between twisted branches and the rustling of birds returning to roost. The dirt underfoot is damp with the memory of yesterday's rain, and as you step carefully over exposed roots, you can't help but notice how quiet it's become. Just the hush of wind in the leaves and the occasional snap of a twig beneath your boots. And in this quiet, you start to think differently about the body you're walking in. It's more than a vessel. It's more than a measurement. It's a living document written in scars and stretch in endurance and adaptation. And in medieval times, your body was your biography. Let's talk bones for a moment. Not in a medical sense, but in a practical one. If someone were to find your skeleton centuries later, they could read it like a book. Your height might be estimated at 5'5", give or take. Your tibias might show growth interruptions, arrest lines marking each time your body paused development due to starvation or illness. Your vertebrae might reveal compressed discs from carrying weight too early too often. Your pelvis, if you're female, could show birth trauma or a narrow shape that once carried risk with every pregnancy. The size of you would tell the story of everything you faced without a single word. You duck beneath a low-hanging branch and think about something else, how the people of this time probably never thought about their height the way you do. No one was measuring themselves against idealized versions of humanity. There were no tall runway models or sports stars to idolize. No one was taking selfies to showcase leg length or shoulder breadth. Size didn't exist as a fashion, it existed as a consequence. Yet despite this, people still noticed. They still made quiet comparisons. A tall child might be the subject of gossip. A short man might feel the sting of ridicule in court. And sometimes, physical size did grant advantage, but only when paired with function. The large plowman who could turn earth faster. The tall guard who could see over a crowd. But without ability, height meant little. You couldn't eat it. You couldn't wear it. You couldn't use it to milk cows or chop wood. It wasn't a luxury you could trade. You emerge from the trees now and come across a group of men working on a stretch of road, clearing debris, laying stones. They're covered in dust, their tunics damp with sweat. None of them looks especially tall. Their shoulders are rounded from years of labor. Their hands are thick with callus. You watch as they pass buckets down a line with mechanical efficiency, each person knowing exactly when to lift, when to release. No one wastes movement. It's like choreography, rough, precise, necessary. One of them pauses and leans on a shovel. He squints at you and then nods. "Traveling?" he asks. You nod back. "Just passing through." He smiles faintly. His teeth are stained from ale and age. "Be careful past the marsh," he says. Ground gets soft. And then he's back to work, shoulders flexing, legs bending, not a wasted muscle in sight. He might only be 5'6", but you wouldn't want to arm wrestle him. You wouldn't want to race him up a hill with a barrel strapped to your back. Because his size doesn't reflect potential. It reflects use. You sit on a fallen log nearby for a few minutes watching. And it's here in this moment that you really begin to feel the difference between modern strength and medieval strength. Today, you might measure power in reps and pounds lifted and calories burned at the gym. But here, it's measured in stamina, in how many hours you can work without stopping, in how many winters your body can endure, in how many times you can carry water without spilling a drop. It's not glamorous, but it's real. Even posture, something we fuss over now with ergonomic chairs and yoga classes, is different here. You start to notice how many people lean forward slightly when they walk. How many favor one side of the body. You realize that everyone has developed their own way of moving that matches the labor they do. No one's trying to look correct. They're just trying to survive another day with a body that still works. And this brings you to the idea of wear. Not just fatigue, but the physical wearing down of the human frame. You've seen it in the older men and women backs curled like shepherd's crooks' knees, bowed outward from years of standing shoulders, permanently hunched from the burden of carrying. There are no painkillers here, no joint replacements. When something gives out, it stays out. When something breaks, it heals wrong or not at all. The body is not maintained, it's spent. You rise again and continue walking, the evening growing heavier with each step. The scent of peat and smoke begins to drift on the air, signaling that homes and hearths lie ahead. You pass a shepherd tending his flock, standing quiet and watchful with a crook in hand. He's wiry, weathered, and still. You imagine he's stood in this field for decades. Perhaps he's never grown past 5'3". But the sheep know his shape. The hills know his tread. And that too is a kind of size. Because in the medieval world, it's not the inches you stand above the ground that matter. It's the imprint you leave on it. You follow a narrow track toward a small inn nestled at the edge of a copse. Lantern light glows in the window. The sound of conversation drifts outward, low, tired, honest. And as you step through the crooked doorframe, ducking instinctively, you begin to feel it again. That size is not spectacle here. Size is survival. And you, just like everyone else in this time, have been built slowly, painfully, perfectly for the life you must live. So let's rest for a moment. Take in the firelight and prepare to rise with the sun once more. There's still more road to walk. The inn is warm and shadowy, lit by the flickering glow of firewood crackling in the hearth, and a few smudged oil lamps hung on thick wooden beams. You slip inside quietly, ducking beneath a beam that seems unnaturally low, until you realize once again it isn't the beam that's low. It's the ceiling that was never meant for someone used to modern architecture. You're not abnormally tall. You're just not built like them. A serving girl glides past you with a tray of turnip stew and barley bread. She's young, but her shoulders already carry the stiffness of constant work. She might be 5'1", perhaps less, with narrow hips and arms roped with muscle, not from lifting weights, but from lifting children, hauling pots, and scrubbing floors. She doesn't think of herself as small. She's functional, quick on her feet, durable. She disappears into a back room, and you find a corner near the fire. A few men sit hunched over mugs of ale at a long table. Their voices are low and tired, thick with dialect. You catch glimpses of their faces marked with weather and years. None of them stands out in size. Their builds vary slightly, some thicker, some wirier, but they're all compact, shaped by lives of effort, not indulgence. One man stretches out his legs with a groan, and you notice how short his lower limbs seem. Not deformed, just the natural result of growth interrupted. Perhaps a sickly winter at age 10. Perhaps a childhood of too little protein and too many parasites. You sip the warm ale set before you. It tastes earthy, slightly sour. No one here is counting carbs or macros. Nutrition is measured in how long you stay upright, how long before your joints give out, how long before a meal turns into strength rather than sickness. Your eyes drift toward a wooden staircase in the corner, leading up to the sleeping loft. The stairs are narrow, shallow, steep, made for short legs and quick ascents. No banister, no railing. Just rough boards worn smooth by centuries of feet. You climb carefully, your knees brushing your chest with every step. At the top, the ceiling angles sharply, the room narrowing to a peak. Beds are small, low to the ground. Some are just straw pallets. Others are slightly raised wooden frames. You lie down on one and feel your legs extend awkwardly over the edge. Not because the bed is child-sized, but because you, by medieval standards, are not. And this is where it starts to really sink in. Everything was designed around the average medieval human body. The furniture, the tools, the clothes, the beds. And the reason they feel small to you is not that they're miniature. It's that modern life has allowed you to grow beyond what was once typical. You think about the forge you passed earlier, the way blacksmiths shaped hammers and plowshares for hands like theirs, not yours. You think about the armor in the museum back home the way you always assumed it was a child's suit until you learned it had belonged to a fully grown man. And you think about the buildings, the door frames, the benches, the stone steps, all built with a different body in mind. A body shaped by hunger, by repetition, by cold winters and hot summers and hard soil. A body that didn't just live in the world, it was forged by it. Lying in that lumpy bed, you listen to the building breathe. Wind whistles through the roof beams. Muffled voices drift up from below, and your thoughts wander to the quiet tragedies of size that we rarely think about. The child who stopped growing after a fever. The woman whose hips were too narrow to bear children safely. The boy who, due to some accident or weakness, never developed the muscle needed to survive on a farm. In this world, smallness isn't just a number, it's a fate, and yet, here you are, surrounded by people who survived anyway, who adapted, who thrived in ways we barely understand. You drift off for a while, lulled by the warmth and the weariness in your limbs. And when you wake, the world has changed again. It's night. Stars blink through a cracked shutter. And downstairs, the inn has quieted to silence. You rise and stretch. Your body feels stiff, not from age, but from the unfamiliar use of muscles. You've walked further than usual today. You've ducked through narrow halls, lifted water sat on low benches, eaten meals that required effort to chew and digest. You've used your body in ways your modern life rarely demands. And now you begin to feel it, not just the fatigue, but the understanding. Medieval humans weren't small in the way you first thought. They were precise, shaped by an environment that offered no excess, no softness, no safety net. Their size was a direct response to their world. No more, no less. As you descend the stairs, quietly careful not to wake the others, you step back outside into the chill of midnight. The stars above are impossibly clear. No electric lights to dim them. Just moonlight wind and your own breath curling in the air. You walk for a while following the road that runs past the inn. Your boots crunch softly over gravel and dirt. The night carries the scent of moss and smoke, and in the distance you see it, a figure on horseback. Tall, not because he is unusually large, but because the horse lifts him into prominence. As he approaches, you see the truth. He's not a giant, perhaps 5'7", but his bearing, his armor, the cut of his tunic, they all work to elevate him. His stature is constructed. His presence is curated. He nods at you as he passes. No words. Just a moment of recognition between two people who understand that size is more than measurement. It's the ability to shape space, to hold it, fill it, command it. You stand in the dark, the hoofbeats fading behind you. And for the first time, you understand the secret of the medieval body. It isn't how tall you are. It's how well you've grown into the world you were given. Let's keep going. There are still more lives to step into, more shapes to understand. The road ahead is pale with moonlight stretching through rolling fields that glisten with dew. Each step feels softer now, as if the earth itself has decided to cradle your feet for a while. The world around you has gone quiet, no birds, no chatter, just the gentle hush of leaves moving in rhythm with the wind. You walk slower here, not because you're tired, but because there's a stillness to this stretch of land, a reverence. And it makes you think not just about the bodies that filled this world, but the way they were remembered. Because for all the records kept in castles and churches, for all the laws and chronicles, most medieval people, yourself included, would be remembered only by the shape they left behind. A grave, a tool worn to fit their hand, a doorway carved just high enough to duck through, a wooden spoon, a chair with grooves where fingers always rested. You come upon a small cemetery nestled behind a crumbling stone chapel. The markers are uneven, some made of slate, others of wood, so worn the names have vanished. You walk slowly among them, reading what you can. The dates blur together, but the lives behind them flicker into your mind. A woman who died in childbirth, a child who never saw 10 winters. A man who lived long enough to be called old, which here might mean 50. And beneath the ground, bones shaped by labor, by illness, by hunger. Femurs shortened by famine, spines curved from toil, skulls bearing the marks of abscessed teeth, untreated infections, or poorly set injuries. You realize that the story of medieval size isn't just about height, it's about damage. Wear, repair. You kneel beside one small grave and brush the moss away. The carving is simple, a cross and a name. No titles, no achievements, just the marker of a life. And you can't help but wonder, how tall were they? How strong did they reach adulthood? Were they remembered for their sacrifice, or for how well they loved, worked, endured? You rise and step away, leaving the past to rest. Back on the road, you head east as the sky begins to lighten with the first thread of dawn. A flock of crows lifts from a tree in sudden flight, and the cold air kisses your face like a reminder this world never stops moving. Neither do its people. Now you find yourself approaching a small barn. Inside, a farmer is stirring his silhouette, barely visible in the murky glow of a lantern. You pause at the threshold and watch. He moves slowly, stretching out a back that clearly aches. He's older, though. Once again, it's hard to guess how much. The lines on his face may come from age or simply from the 1,000 sunrises he's labored through. He stands no taller than 5'6", and yet in this quiet moment, he seems immense. Because it's not his size that defines him, it's the life lived within that frame. He leads out a cow and begins the ritual of milking. His hands move without thought. Every motion perfected over decades. The muscles in his arms tighten and release in a practiced rhythm. This too is strength. Not explosive, not theatrical, just enduring. Quiet. The kind of strength that doesn't need to be seen to be believed. And then you think about what it took for medieval humans to grow at all. The constant push and pull between their bodies and their environment. They weren't fed for growth, they were fed to survive. Their food didn't come with labels or vitamins, it came from dirt and sweat. A bad harvest could mean months of stunted development. A fever at age 3 could shorten a lifetime. So how did anyone grow tall? The answer is rarely, and with luck. It took a sequence of near miracles. A mother with enough milk, a childhood without deadly infections, access to animal protein even just occasionally, a safe place to sleep. And if all that happened, then yes, someone might inch up to 5'8" or even 5'9". But such people were exceptions, not the rule. And often they were noted for it. A big lad, a tall girl, words that marked them as different. You move past the barn and down a grassy lane toward a cluster of homes just beginning to wake. Smoke curls from chimneys again. A girl with a scarf around her head scatters feed for chickens. Her posture is stooped not from age but from habits formed young. You watch her for a moment, noting the sure way she moves the calluses on her hands. She can't be older than 14, and already she's smaller than you, more weathered than you, stronger than you, in ways that don't show on the surface. Because the medieval world didn't need broad shoulders or long legs. It needed bodies that could bend, flex, kneel, endure. It needed people who could go without and still rise the next morning. Your strength was judged by how long you could carry the weight of the world before it finally broke you. A woman calls out from a doorway, and the girl runs inside. You keep walking. Past these houses, the road turns to stone again, leading to another village, another chapter in this quiet story of size and survival. And as the sun peeks over the horizon, casting a pale gold light across the frost-touched earth, you feel the truth settle into your bones. The people of this time were not small. They were just perfectly measured for a world that demanded everything. Let's keep moving. We're not done learning from them yet. The morning stretches long across the land, now the frost retreating under a growing sun that casts everything in soft amber light. Birds begin to sing again, not in chorus, but in scattered bursts that stitch the silence together. You follow the stone road as it leads you into another village, this one larger, busier, but still modest by modern standards. There's a black and white dog nosing through a pile of old straw, and a few men setting up their workstations beneath a timber-framed awning. Hammers, chisels, leather strips, wool baskets. It's a tradesman's square, and here you see size take on yet another form. These craftsmen aren't large, not in the way you might expect from men who work with their hands all day. Most are under 5'6". Their torsos are compact, their arms long in proportion to their height, an evolutionary advantage when it comes to labor that demands reach, endurance, and precision. One tanner walks with a permanent stoop, not from age, but from years bending over hides, scraping and stretching them. His back curves like a crescent moon. His hands are stained dark, rough as bark. He barely lifts his eyes as you pass. You stop to watch a wheelwright fit spokes into a rim. He moves with ritual-like precision, his body flowing around the shape of the wheel. You notice how close to the ground he stays, kneeling, squatting, leaning with bent knees. These are the natural movements of people whose world wasn't built for tall postures and standing desks. The idea of comfort never really arrived here. Only functionality did. The shop behind him is low-ceilinged and deep. The bench is short. The tools are scaled down. This isn't a place built for grandeur. It's a place built for endurance, for repetition, for making dozens of things by hand every single week without a single wasted motion. And here too, the size of the medieval human body is not a limitation. It's a response. If you're shorter, you can move more efficiently in tight workshops. You require fewer calories. You manage heat better in small stone rooms with thick thatched roofs. You survive longer during famine because your body has fewer demands. And when winters stretch on endlessly, when supplies run thin, those inches you don't have, they could save your life. There's an older woman seated beside a loom in the corner. Her hair is wrapped up beneath a kerchief, and her fingers move quickly through the wool, pulling, threading, knotting. Her back is bent, her shoulders narrow, her face unreadable. You guess she's about 5'0", maybe a bit taller in her youth, but you'd never call her small. Not after you've watched her weave row after row without pause. You realize something else too in this world. Your size can change. Not just over time, but through labor, through injury, through habit. If you favor one side of your body for carrying, you'll build asymmetrically. If you walk miles every day on uneven ground, your feet widen, your arches collapse. If you spend your life squatting over fields or fires, your knees stiffen, your spine adjusts. You don't grow into a body here, you grow with it, until your shape is dictated more by use than by birth. Back outside, you pass a group of children running down the lane. They laugh as they race toward the well legs, moving like they've never known pain. Some are barefoot. Others wear scraps tied to their feet. None of them seems very tall. You wonder how many of them will grow beyond 5 feet. You wonder how many of them will survive the next 10 winters. And that thought follows you as you reach a stone bridge that crosses a narrow stream. You lean against the edge, watching the water move below. It's cold and fast, tumbling over smooth stones. You see your reflection ripple in the surface, taller, broader than the villagers you've walked among. And you feel for a moment like a visitor, not just from another land, but another species. But you're not. You're the same, made of the same bones, just shaped by a different world. One where antibiotics exist, where protein is cheap, where clean water flows with a twist of a tap, and sickness doesn't steal inches from your growth. You walk on. Eventually you come to the edge of the village where a training yard has been cleared beside a crumbling stone wall. 2 young men are sparring with wooden staves, laughing, taunting, ducking. They're agile but not tall, maybe 5'6", 5'5". You stop to watch as they twist and lunge using their size to their advantage. Lower center of gravity, faster recovery from a stumble. Strength condensed into a smaller frame. A man watching from the sideline, likely their trainer, turns toward you. He wears a gambeson stitched with wear, and his arms are crossed. "You're taller than most," he says bluntly. You nod. "By accident of birth." He grunts, amused. "Won't help you much. Makes you a bigger target." And just like that, the truth is spoken plainly in a world of close combat, of tight passageways, of low ceilings, and hard corners. Being tall is not always an advantage. It's a difference, and difference is always noticed. The trainer waves the boys on, and you leave the yard behind the snap of staves echoing behind you like distant applause. As the sun rises higher, casting short shadows beneath every eave and fence post, you think again about measurement, about how much meaning we give to height in the modern age. How it colors first impressions, sets expectations, fuels confidence or insecurity. And then you realize back here, it doesn't mean half as much. Because no one in this village will ask how tall you are. They'll ask if you can lift the sack, if you can chase the sheep, if you can haul the stones, if you can kneel for long hours without pain, if you can last through the winter. That's what matters. And that's what defines size here, not the inches you stand above the ground, but the inches you give to your life's work. So let's keep going. The road is turning again, leading toward the hills. There's still more to learn from these bodies carved by the past. The road rises into a ridge now winding along the edge of a low hill that overlooks a patchwork of fields below, some freshly plowed, others left fallow, others yet green with hardy crops. You pause to catch your breath, not because the incline is steep, but because the air is changing. Up here, it's thinner, clearer. You can see farther, and everything stretches out in sharp detail. And with that clarity comes reflection. You've seen villages, markets, blacksmiths, looms, children. You've walked among the living and the long gone. And still, the question lingers. What was the size of a medieval human? Up here it becomes easier to answer because you've begun to understand that size isn't just something to measure. It's something you carry. And now looking out across the land, you realize that medieval people carried a lot. The weight of expectation, of hardship, of survival. They carried it in smaller bodies, but that didn't make it lighter. A man walks up behind you, leading a mule loaded with sacks of grain. He's older, with a face like cracked leather, and hands that look more like tools than flesh. You nod to him, and he nods back, pausing beside you to let the animal rest. He's quiet, observant, and shorter than you, noticeably so. Probably 5'4", but with a chest like a barrel and legs built for climbing slopes like this. "You from the south?" he asks after a while. You shrug. "Farther than that." He chuckles, not unkindly. "Aye. Thought so." You walk tall. You smile, unsure whether it's a compliment or just an observation. "Is that good?" He thinks about it for a moment. Good if the roof is high. Not so good if it ain't. And with that, he's off again, the mule clopping along behind him, dust rising gently in their wake. You watch him go, reminded again that height might impress from a distance, but function wins every time. You descend the other side of the hill and come across a shepherd's camp, just a circle of stones around a fire, a skin tent, and 2 dogs lying belly up in the sun. A boy tends the sheep, no more than 12, and small even for that. He waves to you, cheerful, confident, in a way that makes his size irrelevant. You nod back, and as you pass, you wonder, will he grow tall? Will he stay here forever? Will his bones hold strong under years of walking these hills? Because that's the secret of the land, it molds you. The soil beneath your feet decides how tall you'll stand. The harvest determines how much muscle you'll build. The cold nights decide how much fat your body can store. Everything is dictated by nature, not nurture. There are no growth charts, no protein shakes, no sleep apps. Just the earth, the weather, the work. You pass through a narrow gorge next where the path curves between 2 tall cliffs. The wind whistles through the stone like an old song. And for a moment, you think about warriors, men who defended these lands. You think about the stories we tell, giants in chainmail, sword-wielding heroes, men of towering might. And then you remember the evidence armor too narrow for modern chests. Helmets too tight for modern heads. You remember that many of these so-called giants were under 5'7". Broad in the shoulder, yes, but not tall. Size was illusion, magnified by presence, by bravery, by the stories told after the battle. You exit the gorge and follow a small trail that splits off the main road. It leads to a stone cottage tucked into a slope, half hidden by ivy and brush. An old woman tends a garden there, stooped low, her frame nearly horizontal. You pause at the gate and she looks up with sharp eyes. "Traveler," she asks. You nod. "Come in then. You're late for lunch." You accept her offer and step into her world. Inside the cottage, the ceiling is barely above your head. Everything is smaller bowls, stools, the hearth itself. Yet everything works. Nothing is wasted. You sit on a stool and fold your legs awkwardly. She sets down a bowl of thick vegetable stew and a slab of coarse bread. You eat slowly, your body grateful. As you finish, she watches you. "You're from a place where people grow tall," she says, not unkindly. "Must be food, or fortune." You swallow and nod. "Both, maybe." She smiles faintly. "Don't matter much in the end. Big bodies still break, same as small ones. And that's it, isn't it? The truth you've been circling. No matter how many inches tall a person stood, they still bent under the same burdens. Still aged, still fell ill, still died. And in a world where few lived past 50, the size of your body was only as useful as the work it could do. When it couldn't anymore, the world moved on, because it had to. You thank her and leave, stepping once again into the golden light of afternoon. And as you walk, you reflect on the different kinds of size you've encountered. Physical, yes, but also emotional, spiritual, functional. The man who could carry stone, the woman who could deliver 6 children and survive, the boy who could run a flock without fear. You realize that every person you've met has been the right size for the life they lead. And you, in this world, your body is unfamiliar, slightly too large, slightly out of rhythm. But you're learning, adapting, shrinking in the ways that matter, growing in others. The path curves again. There's another village ahead, nestled in a valley smoke, curling upward like a signal from the past. You keep walking. There are more stories waiting, more lives to step into, and still more truths to uncover about the humans who came before you, small in stature but never in strength. Let's continue. By the time you reach the next village, the shadows are stretching longer, pooling beneath the trees, and gathering like old memories along the fence lines. You feel the miles in your legs now, not as pain, but as wear, the kind that settles deep into your muscles and tells you you've earned your rest. But rest can wait, because in this village, quiet, stone-built and lined with wood smoke and low voices, you're about to see another layer of the medieval body. This village is older. The homes are close together, walls bowed outward with age roofs sloping low like the backs of the people who built them. You pass a woman sweeping her doorway. She barely glances up. Her movements are slow, mechanical. Her broom worn at an angle that suggests it's been held the same way for decades. Her spine curves, left one shoulder slightly lower than the other. She doesn't look disabled. She looks used. Like everything here, her tools, her home, her body is doing exactly what it was made to do, no matter how long it's been doing it. You continue through the narrow lanes until you find the carpenter's yard. Sawdust litters the ground, and a few planks are leaned against a wall warped by moisture. The carpenter, a man in his 30s but with the leathery skin of someone much older, is bent over a frame. He's not tall, perhaps 5'5" at most, but his hands move with that same uncanny efficiency you've come to recognize here. His grip is sure. His swing is perfect. He's built not for display, but for precision. He looks up briefly and gestures to a stool nearby. "If you're walking, you'll need a rest," he says. You sit. The stool wobbles. It's been made for a lighter person. "You look strong," he says. "But are you good strong or wasteful strong?" You raise an eyebrow. "What's the difference?" he smirks. Good strong gets the job done. Wasteful strong breaks tools and pulls muscles. And there it is again, the medieval mindset. Strength isn't about power. It's about endurance, control, knowing your limits, being small enough to fit where you need to, but strong enough to push through what you must. He points to a stack of beams. "Had a man through here once, big fella, foreigner. Broke 3 chisels just trying to split a door frame. Thought he was doing good work, he was just swinging too hard." You nod, understanding now. In a world without machines, the body is the machine. And if it's too big, it's inefficient, unwieldy, wasteful. As the carpenter returns to work, you step back into the lane. A church bell tolls in the distance, and you follow the sound, eventually arriving at the village square. There, a group of young boys play a game with sticks and a leather ball. None are particularly tall, and they move like colts, clumsy, fast, full of unshaped energy. One tumbles hard and rolls up laughing, his tunic muddy, his knee scraped. He can't be more than 10, but he's already lean with labor. You watch, wondering how many more inches he'll gain, if his growth will be spared by a gentle winter or stolen by the next fever. In the corner of the square, a teacher calls out from beneath a cloister arch. He's slight, almost frail-looking, with fingers stained by ink. He speaks Latin to a group of boys, reciting chants, correcting pronunciation with a sharp ear. This man, too, is small in stature, but his mind towers. His role isn't physical. His presence doesn't rely on size. And yet in this village, he likely holds as much authority as the reeve or the smith. You're beginning to see it now, not just with your eyes, but with your understanding. Medieval people weren't uniformly small. They were situationally small, designed, shaped, molded by their environment and purpose. You walk past a bakery next, where a girl pulls loaves from a clay oven using a long wooden paddle. Her face shines with heat and concentration. Her arms are strong from repetition, but she barely reaches your shoulder. And yet, in this tiny space, she moves like she owns it. Because she does. Even the homes reflect the bodies that inhabit them. Doorways are low furniture squat. There's no waste in design. You duck to enter a house and feel clumsy like an oversized puppet. But the people here, they move with grace inside their constraints. They don't bump ceilings. They don't knock over chairs. Their bodies are scaled exactly to their world. And that's something modern life often forgets, the relationship between the body and the space it fills. Today, rooms are built large to accommodate larger people and larger things. Back then, everything was reduced to essentials. You didn't need more than you could carry. You didn't build more than you could use. As dusk begins to creep in again, the village settles. Torches are lit. Dogs bark once, then quiet. People begin drifting inside, drawing shutters, latching doors. You find a spot beneath an awning and sit, letting the air cool your skin and the silence settle in. And now you know medieval humans were not tiny curiosities. They were not frail or broken or underdeveloped. They were the right size for the world they lived in. Their bodies weren't sculpted in gyms or labs. They were carved by necessity, bent by repetition, weathered by labor. They were strong in the places it counted, flexible where they had to be, durable above all. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine someone looking at your body centuries from now. What would they assume? What story would your size tell? Then you open them again, stand up and return to the path, because the night is coming, and the story of medieval humans still has more to reveal. The sun has vanished beyond the horizon, leaving the sky a deep velvet blue. The first stars begin to wink through the dusky curtain overhead, and a cold wind creeps in, as if to remind you that night in the medieval world was not merely dark, it was absolute. No street lamps, no electric lights, just fire and moonlight and faith. You wrap your cloak tighter, one borrowed from a villager earlier in the day, and continue walking, guided now by sound more than sight. The crunch of your boots on gravel, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft rustle of trees whispering secrets in the wind. And with each step you return to the question that has followed you this whole journey. What was the size of a medieval human? Tonight that question feels more personal, because now you understand that it wasn't just a matter of bone and flesh, but of adaptation, of how a person came to fit inside their world. You come upon a wayside shrine, a simple cross standing beside a well-traveled road. A candle flickers inside the small stone enclosure, sheltered by a panel of oiled parchment. Beneath it, the words, Ora pro nobis, are scrawled. Pray for us. And you do silently. Not because you're afraid, but because it feels like the right kind of stillness for a night like this. Behind the shrine, a low barn stands open. Inside, the glow of coals in a forge pulses gently like a sleeping heart. A farrier is finishing work on a horse's shoe. Sparks fly as he strikes iron with perfect rhythm. You watch from the doorway. He hasn't seen you yet. His frame is stocky, nothing extraordinary at first glance. Maybe 5'6", but his arms are thick, his stance grounded. What stands out isn't his size, but his stability. The way his feet seem fused to the ground. The way each hammer strike is calculated, never wasted. You don't see muscle bulging beneath his tunic. You see something better: efficiency. He finally notices you and gives a tired nod, then sets the iron shoe aside and removes his gloves. You ask if you can warm yourself by the fire, and he waves you in. The barn is quiet, save for the sizzle of cooling metal and the soft snort of a horse nearby. I've shod hooves for 20 years, he says without prompting. When I started, I was scrawny, could barely lift the tongs. But you grow into the work. Doesn't matter how tall you are, just how long you last. You nod, absorbing the truth of that. Here, longevity matters more than size, endurance more than presence. He gestures to a stool and sits across from you. Had a brother, he says after a moment. Tall as a tree, looked like a hero out of a song. But he burned too fast. Worked too hard too fast. Back gave out by 30. Dead by 35. The silence afterward is thick. People think size is strength, he mutters. But strength is what's left when size doesn't help anymore. You thank him and step back into the night, his words echoing in your ears. As you continue down the road, you reflect on how often modern life mistakes appearance for ability. But here, everything is proven by action, by repetition, by time. In the distance, you see the glow of another village, smaller this time, with fewer homes and less noise. You enter quietly, passing a single-room cottage where an elderly man is seated outside, wrapped in wool, staring up at the stars. He doesn't speak as you pass, but he raises a hand. His fingers are gnarled, his shoulders permanently hunched. And yet even sitting, you sense something monumental about him. You wonder how long he's lived, how many harvests he's seen fail and return, how many winters he's outlasted. He may only be 5'2" now, stooped further by time, but his presence makes him seem 10 feet tall. You find a spot beneath a tree and settle in for the night. The ground is uneven but dry. Above you, the stars are so bright, they feel close enough to touch. And as you lie there, cloak pulled close, you begin to catalog the truths you've gathered. Medieval people weren't small by accident. They were small by design. Because the world around them demanded compact strength, not display. Because their diets, their diseases, and their daily work conspired to limit growth, but not resilience. They weren't short so much as concentrated. Condensed strength. Silent endurance. And now you see that size is an illusion if separated from context. A medieval child who grew to 5'7" wasn't just tall, they were rare. A woman who lived to 50 wasn't just old, she was extraordinary. A body that could carry wood at sunrise and raise walls by noon wasn't just functional, it was exceptional. You're beginning to feel this in your own bones now. Not weakness, but respect, and perhaps a little humility. The fireflies blink in the tall grass. The wind carries the distant notes of a lute from some home with its shutters cracked open. and you close your eyes knowing that the people of this age, with their smaller bones and shorter frames, carried the weight of a brutal world with more grace than most giants could. Sleep comes easily now. The night is kind. You've earned your place in it. But when morning comes, we walk again, because there's more to learn, more to see, and the shape of the past is still unfolding. Morning finds you beneath the same tree dew clinging to your cloak, and the soft scent of damp earth rising into the air. The village is still quiet. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance, and a single cart creaks over stone far away. You sit up slowly, your body reminding you that this time period isn't made for comfort. Your back aches, your knees protest, but you smile anyway. Because somehow the discomfort feels earned. You rise and walk toward the village square, stretching out muscles that feel just a bit tighter than yesterday. This is how it was for them every morning, stiff from sleeping on straw or hard wood, and yet rising without pause, without question. Because to live here is to move, and to move is to survive. Today, you're walking toward the abbey. The village's stone church, larger than anything around it, rises modestly above the rooftops, flanked by a small cloister and herb garden. The stones are worn smooth by centuries of prayer and passage. You pass through its arched gate into a courtyard where a few monks tend to the plants. They glance at you briefly, robes rustling as they kneel to inspect mint and rosemary thyme and sage. One of them stands. He's tall for this place, perhaps 5'9", his figure draped in the heavy folds of wool. His face is gentle, lined with age, but not haggard. His hands are stained green, and a book peeks from his sleeve. You ask if you might observe the work for a moment. He nods silently and returns to trimming basil. It strikes you again, monks of all the people you've encountered seem different. Healthier. Taller. Not always, but often enough to notice. And there's a reason for that. Monasteries, despite their vows of poverty, often offered a better diet and cleaner surroundings than peasant homes. Meals were structured. Baths, though rare, were not unheard of. Illness still came, but starvation was less common. In these quiet walls, the human body had a rare chance to grow closer to its potential. You wander into the cloister walk enclosed by columns and open sky. A novice crosses the stones carrying a tray of bread and cheese, simple food but nourishing. You wonder how tall he'll grow in this setting, if his bones will stretch further than his father's did, if his days will be longer and his muscles more rested, not because of wealth, but because of rhythm. Monks lived by the hours. Meals, prayers, sleep, all set by bells. Predictability in a world full of chaos can be as nourishing as food. You follow a monk into the scriptorium, where 3 more sit hunched over pages. Light streams in through narrow slits in the wall, falling across parchment and ink. Their bodies are still, completely still. But their hands move careful, practiced, deliberate. One man coughs gently and shifts. You notice how his back arches unnaturally, a curve formed not from age or disease, but from years of bending over books. His fingers are stained with iron gall ink, his nails short, his knuckles swollen. He may never have lifted a hammer or carried a sack of barley, but his body bears the mark of his own kind of labor. And here again you realize size means nothing without context. This man may be small bent and narrow in frame, but he has copied the scriptures, letters, and medical texts that might one day guide the hands of a healer or save the soul of a noble. His influence stretches far beyond his reach. You leave the abbey as the bell for sext rings out midday prayers. The sound echoes through the hills, calling workers to pause, to bow their heads, to find quiet. Even the birds seem to hush. And as you descend the hill once more, you spot a young woman leading a mule down a narrow path. She wears a tunic belted at the waist, her feet bare, her stride steady. She can't be more than 5 feet tall, yet she walks like she owns the road. Her face is stern, but not unkind. Her arms are wrapped in rope from leading the beast, and her voice is sharp as she speaks commands. It dawns on you that this world isn't made for height or for show. It's made for control, for command. And this woman, though small, possesses both. She passes without a word, eyes straight ahead. And you think how many great deeds have been done by people who stood barely to your shoulder. How many lives shaped by hands that never lifted a sword, but carried firewood, baked bread, planted seed. The road curves again, opening into a field where workers bend over rows of cabbage and onion. They move with that slow, rhythmic motion of those who know how to pace themselves. One man lifts his head and stretches. He's tall, taller than most you've seen, but thin, almost fragile. His limbs dangle like willow branches. He wipes sweat from his brow, then returns to his work. And there it is again, the paradox. Height does not equal strength. Strength is not always visible. And presence, true presence, comes from something deeper than physical dimensions. You walk among them for a while unnoticed. Just one more body shaped by 1,000 factors, weather, soil, sleep water, food, faith, fear. Eventually you reach a quiet grove where you sit and rest, watching the sun pass behind drifting clouds. You understand now that the question you began with, what was the size of a medieval human, has no single answer. Because there were many kinds of size. There were men small in stature who carried generations. Women slight of frame who buried 5 children and still rose with the sun. Children who never reached their full height, but died with courage. And monks with stooped backs who preserved the wisdom of centuries. Their size is not measured in inches or feet. It's measured in the shape of their days, in what they endured, in what they left behind. And you've walked beside them now. Let's keep walking. There are still more truths tucked into the bones of the past. You rise from the grove, slowly brushing leaves from your cloak as the air begins to shift once more. The sky overhead thickens with soft gray clouds, and there's a scent of damp stone in the breeze. Rain is coming. Not yet, but soon. You tighten your cloak and continue along the path, one foot in front of the other, every step now softened by damp earth and the weight of everything you've seen. As the road winds into a forest again, the canopy overhead dims the daylight to a kind of quiet twilight. Your eyes adjust and your thoughts turn inward. By now, you're not just walking through the medieval world, you're inhabiting it. Every sensation is shaped by the bodies of those who lived before you. Their habits, their limitations, their silent resilience. And now your focus shifts to something you haven't thought much about until now, aging. You've seen young bodies, children darting through the streets, apprentices hauling sacks, girls chasing goats. You've seen adult bodies in their prime, smiths, farmers, weavers, monks. But what did the aging medieval body look like? How did time change it? You find your answer soon enough. In a clearing up ahead, you spot a man sitting beneath a lean-to made of timber and thatch. His beard is silver, but his face is surprisingly unlined. Not youthful, just preserved, hardened, like leather that's been weathered into permanence. He waves you over, offering a place beside his fire. You sit. He doesn't speak much, but that's fine. You're used to silence now, the kind that isn't empty but full of shared understanding. He offers you a strip of dried meat, tough, chewy, nourishing. You chew slowly as you study him. He's small, maybe 5'3" now, though he was likely taller in his youth. His back is hunched, not sharply, but with the gentle stoop of decades spent leaning into the world. His hands are twisted by arthritis. His knees don't fully straighten, but still he chops wood, tends fire, watches the forest with clear eyes. This is the medieval elder, not defined by age and numbers, but by use. In modern times, we track age in candles and calendars. Here, age is measured in seasons endured, children buried or raised, winters survived, tools passed down. And the body over time is not just worn, it is transformed. You think about the skeletons studied in laboratories. The ones from medieval cemeteries bent and bowed in the same ways you see before you now. Vertebrae compressed, knees worn smooth, teeth ground flat, joints fused by labor. These weren't illnesses. These were inevitabilities. And yet those bones tell stories. This man before you, though smaller than you, holds a presence heavier than his frame. You imagine what his life looked like. What it meant to work into your 50s, maybe 60s, with no physicians, no supplements, no rest. And what it meant to keep going anyway. He finally speaks. You've walked far. You nod. He gestures to your legs. Still strong, you smile. For now. He chuckles. That's how it starts. And just like that, you see the quiet humor of a man who's watched himself shrink and stiffen over the years, not with bitterness, but with understanding. As you rise to leave, he offers one last piece of advice that you grow into the world when you're young. But when you're old, the world grows around you. You nod and thank him, then slip back into the forest trail, the light dimming further now as the first drops of rain begin to fall, soft, sparse, rhythmic. You walk on. Ahead, the road slopes into a low valley where a herd of cattle is being guided through pasture. The herders move slowly in long, careful strides. One of them, a middle-aged woman with arms like braided rope, motions to the cows with quiet authority. She whistles. They obey. Her gait is wide. Her feet splay outward. Her spine twists slightly left. But she moves with purpose. You realize this body has adapted not just to labor, but to a lifetime of it. In the modern world, such posture might be corrected. Here it's accepted, maybe even respected. You stop by the fence and watch as a child. Perhaps her daughter runs barefoot through the mud to fetch a stray calf. Her feet are thick-soled from calluses. Her knees is already bruised. You can almost see her future in the curve of her back and the way she grips the wooden gate. She will not grow tall, but she will grow capable. You continue down the path as the rain thickens, now a steady whisper over leaves and cloak. You pass a row of homes with thatched roofs, each one exhaling smoke into the misty air. Inside one, you glimpse a grandmother stirring a pot. She's barely more than a silhouette, but her head only reaches the height of the window ledge. Perhaps 4'10", perhaps shorter now than she once was. And yet the rhythm of her work, the stirring, the tasting, the seasoning is exact, refined, intuitive. You begin to feel that the most important growth in this world doesn't happen upward, but inward. Because while bones may shrink and posture may curve, knowledge fills every hollow space. Experience carves depth where time takes height, and dignity gathers like weight in the soul. So you walk on, past puddles and pastures, cottages and cowherds, until the forest wraps around you once more and the sky darkens toward evening. Your body is tired now, but it's a good tired, Because now you know to live in the medieval world was not to live in a smaller body. It was to live in a refined one that carved away what it didn't need, that adapted, contorted, endured, that didn't demand space but earned it, and that more than any measurement tells you everything you need to know. Let's keep going. We're almost there. The rain has lightened to a mist, now beating gently on your cloak and dampening the trees so they glisten in the low, silvery light of late afternoon. Every sound feels closer, the drip of water from leaves, the shuffle of your boots through softened dirt, the low creak of wet leather at your belt. The forest parts ahead, and you emerge into open land once more, where the earth rolls in quiet hills and stone fences carve it into pastures. And here, as you cross a wooden stile into a grazing field, you find yourself thinking about expectations, not modern ones, but medieval ones. What did people expect their bodies to be? How did they imagine healthy, strong, big enough you spot a shepherd in the distance, seated on a low stone wall, watching over a small flock as they crop the grass? He's still almost motionless. You approach slowly, and he offers a nod without turning his head. His figure is slight, maybe 5'4", lean from walking these pastures for years. His boots are patched with cloth, his cloak thick with lanolin and dust. His staff leans beside him like a third limb, clearly as worn as the man himself. You sit beside him without speaking. It's that kind of moment. One where words aren't needed because the silence says enough. After a while, he speaks, eyes still on the sheep. Your hands are soft. You glance at your palms. He's right. You're not from here. You nod. Far from here. He finally turns to look at you. His face is brown and deeply lined. His teeth are few. His beard a patchy gray. But his eyes, they're sharp. Not with suspicion, but with clarity. We're not big people, he says, as if continuing a conversation you started yesterday. Never were. You wait. But we're built to bend, not break. You understand, you do. He taps a knuckle against his chest. When the wind comes hard, the tree that stands tall snaps first. And there it is again. The wisdom that has repeated in different forms across your entire journey. Size isn't everything. Survival is. You walk together for a while, his pace slow, and even his dog at his heels. He tells you stories not in a stream, but in little drips scattered like seeds. About winters when snow climbed over the doors. About summers when the fields cracked and cattle fell dead where they stood. About a girl who lived to 18 and died of tooth rot. About a neighbor who lost 2 sons in the same month to fever. About how he once stood straighter, was once a head higher, until the years took him down inch by inch. And yet, he's still here. I don't need to be tall, he says. I just need to be enough. Eventually, he turns back for his hut, and you continue your walk alone. The land dips into a valley now, and you pass through another village, this one built along a stream. The houses huddle close together, low and lopsided. You stop in a smithy again, this one smaller. The forge cooled for the day. The smith, a woman this time, leans on her anvil arms, folded face smudged with soot. She's no taller than 5 feet, maybe 4'11". You look at her hands and know she could lift you off the ground if she wanted. Her muscles don't show in flashy definition, but they're there coiled under the skin like rope. Looking for something, she asks. Not really, you say. Just passing through. She nods. You're not built for this place. You pause. Because I'm tall. She shrugs. because you look like you've never had to carry something twice your size just to feed something half your size. That silences you. She returns to her workbench and starts oiling a blade, humming softly as she works. And you feel like you've learned something else, not just about the size of the medieval body, but the scale of medieval burdens. People were expected to do more than their frames suggested they could. Lift more, walk farther, last longer, grieve harder, and still show up the next day. You step outside again and watch children skip across the stones lining the stream. Their laughter is light, their legs skinny, their bodies still growing if the seasons allow. A boy trips and falls into the water. His friends laugh, and he does too, scrambling out, soaked and shivering. A woman runs over and wraps him in her shawl, scolding him gently, her arms barely able to stretch around his frame. And you think she will never be tall, but she will be enormous in his memory. You walk on. As twilight deepens, you find yourself in a wide field dotted with hayricks and the silhouettes of people returning home. You're nearing the edge of your journey now, and the question that began it all feels distant, but also deeper. What was the size of a medieval human? Now you know. They were small by today's standards, yes, but they lived lives bigger than their bodies. They didn't measure height in inches, but in how far they could walk. They didn't measure strength in weight, but in how long they could carry it. They didn't measure success in muscles, but in what those muscles served. And maybe, just maybe, that's the size that matters most. The sun vanishes completely now, and the stars take their place. The land grows quiet still. You find one last road leading you toward the final leg of your journey. We're nearly there. Just one more day in the skin of the past. Let's keep walking. The final stretch of road is quiet, almost reverent. Trees rise tall on either side, slender, ancient, and sparse, allowing golden starlight to filter through. The moon hangs low and full, casting soft silver shadows across the path ahead. Every step feels slower now, not because of weariness, but because you know this is the end of the road. And you want to walk it gently. You've seen the fields and forges, the chapels and cottages. You've looked into the faces of blacksmiths, bakers, children, elders, bodies shaped by time, work, hunger, and hope. And now, in this last chapter of your walk, you return to where it all started, the body itself, its shape, its strength, its size. But this time, not just in life, in death. A head nestled between a crumbling stone wall and the roots of a great oak lies a burial ground. Quiet, overgrown. The graves are marked with humble stones, some carved, most not. You step between them carefully, reading what names still remain, and letting your mind fill in the blanks left by lichen and time. This is where the medieval body finally rested. After decades of toil, hunger, joy, and endurance, it returned to the soil that once fed it. And it's here more than anywhere else that archaeologists today have found answers to your question. They've studied these bones preserved beneath centuries of earth. They've measured femurs and skulls, examined teeth worn by stone-ground bread, marked the signs of rickets and arthritis and childbirth trauma. And again, they find a consistent truth. Most medieval men stood between 5'5" and 5'8". Most women between 5'0" and 5'3". And yet their frames told stories that height alone never could. Because height was never the whole story. You've learned that. You've seen how a 5'2" woman could carry water farther than most men today. How a 5'6" man could fight in 3 wars, dig 10,000 furrows, and raise a family before age 40. Their strength didn't come from gym routines. It came from necessity. And their smallness, that wasn't weakness. That was efficiency, evolution, survival. You sit for a moment beside one stone, your hand brushing the cool moss that's crept across its face. There's no name left, but someone once wept here. Someone once remembered who lay beneath. A life lived in quiet resilience, marked only by a stone and the soft shifting of time. And then in the stillness, you hear something bells. Not loud, not ominous, just the soft tolling of evening prayer from a distant chapel. And with it, the weight of history wraps around you like a blanket. You rise and walk once more down a narrow trail that takes you past empty stables, silent mills, sleeping homes. The moon follows your steps, and as you walk, you carry all of it, the stooped backs of farmers, the quick feet of barefoot children, the broad shoulders of butchers, the gnarled fingers of scribes, the bent knees of old women who once birthed villages. This, you realize, was the true size of a medieval human, big enough to carry the burden of their world, small enough to fit through the narrow spaces it left for them, and strong enough to leave a mark we're still reading centuries later. You cross one final bridge as the clouds drift in, cloaking the stars. Your reflection flickers in the water, taller, heavier, straighter than the people you've walked beside, but no more real, no more permanent. And as the first raindrops begin to fall again, soft as dust, you understand that you haven't just learned about their size. You've felt it in your legs, in your shoulders, in your spirit. You've carried it across fields and through villages, through fog and firelight, through stories told with no voice and echoes left in stone. And now you can finally rest. So now close your eyes. Let the road vanish behind you. Let the stone fences crumble. Let the market squares fade into mist. You've traveled so far tonight, not just in distance, but in time. Across muddy fields and down shadowed lanes. Through the heavy silence of stone churches and the smoky comfort of crooked inns. You've stepped into homes smaller than you expected and met people larger than you imagined. Breathe in slowly. Let your breath stretch all the way down to your toes. Feel your muscles let go one by one, your jaw, your shoulders, your hands. Let them be still, because now you don't need to carry anything. Not a pail of water, not a yoke of grain, not even the questions that started you down this road. They've been answered in the quiet language of worn bones and humble lives. The medieval world didn't need giants. It needed people who could bend without breaking, who could live full lives in small bodies, who didn't need to be tall to stand for something. And you've stood among them now, so let yourself drift. Let your mind soften. Let the quiet take you like fog slipping through a sleeping village. You've walked far enough for one night.